The royal courtyard fell silent so suddenly that even the wind seemed afraid to breathe. Iron chains snapped against the stone with a deafening crack. The sound echoed through the towering black walls of Blackthorn Castle, sending birds bursting into the grey morning sky. Guards stumbled backward. Horses screamed in the royal stables. Servants dropped baskets and fled toward the nearest doorway. At the center of the courtyard stood the shadow beast. It was enormous. Its midnight fur swallowed the pale sunlight, making the creature appear carved from living darkness. Silver scars crossed its broad shoulders like old lightning. Its amber eyes burned with a cold intelligence that belonged to something far older than wolves. It was no ordinary beast. It had been the Alpha King's living weapon for 20 years. Now, it was free. A soldier raised his spear with trembling hands. "Hold the line." No one moved. Every warrior standing in the courtyard knew the stories. The beast had ripped through invading armies. It had hunted traitors through blizzards without leaving a single footprint. It obeyed only one command: the Alpha King's. The creature lowered its massive head. A deep growl rolled through its chest. The sound vibrated through the stone beneath everyone's feet. One young guard panicked. He lunged. His spear flashed toward the beast's neck. The attack never landed. With terrifying speed, the shadow beast swung one massive paw. The spear shattered into splinters. The young guard flew across the courtyard and crashed against a marble pillar before collapsing into unconsciousness. Gasps spread through the crowd. Several archers pulled arrows onto their strings. "Don't shoot!" another captain shouted. Too late. 3 arrows flew together. The beast twisted. One arrow missed entirely. The other 2 struck its shoulder. Neither pierced its skin. The arrows bounced harmlessly onto the stone. The growl became louder. Much louder. It was no longer anger. It sounded almost disappointed. Heavy footsteps echoed across the courtyard. The crowd immediately parted. King Kael Blackthorn walked forward. He wore no crown. Only dark leather armor beneath a heavy black cloak lined with wolf fur. A sword rested at his side, though his hand remained far from its hilt. His eyes never left the beast. Neither fear nor panic showed on his face. Only absolute focus. The guards straightened instantly. "My king!" Kael lifted one hand without looking at them. "Stand down." "But your majesty." "I said stand down." The authority in his voice ended every argument. The courtyard became still once more. Kael stepped closer. The beast stared back. Man and monster stood only a few paces apart. For a long moment, neither moved. Everyone watching held their breath. Kael spoke quietly. "Enough." The beast's ears twitched. Nothing else happened. A shadow crossed Kael's face. For the first time in years, it had ignored him. Whispers rippled through the nobles gathered beneath the palace balconies. "It never ignores him. Something is wrong." "The bond." Kael took another careful step. "Return." "And nothing." The beast slowly lifted its nose into the air. It wasn't looking at Kael anymore. It was searching for something. When its glowing eyes drifted across the frightened crowd, past the soldiers, past the servants, past the nobles wrapped in velvet and silver. Stop. Near the outer gate stood a young woman wearing a faded brown cloak. She looked completely out of place among polished armor and expensive silk. Her boots were dusty from travel. A leather satchel hung across one shoulder. Loose strands of chestnut hair escaped beneath her hood. She looked no older than 20. She had been waiting outside the palace gates only moments earlier, hoping to request rare healing herbs from the royal stores. She had walked into chaos. Her name was Lyra Ashwyn. She had never seen a royal court before. She had certainly never stood face to face with the legendary shadow beast. The guards nearest her shouted, "Run! Get away from it!" She should have listened. She looked into the beast's glowing eyes. Not with terror. Not with hatred. With quiet sadness. The creature looked exhausted. Its breathing was uneven. One broken chain remained wrapped around one of its front legs. Fresh blood stained the thick black fur beneath the iron. Lyra noticed the injury immediately. Everything else disappeared. Not the soldiers. Not the king. Not the terrified screams. Only the wounded animal. Without thinking, she stepped forward. The nearest guard nearly grabbed her arm. "Are you mad?" She gently slipped free. Another step. Then another. Kael watched her closely. "Stop." His voice was calm, firm. He paused. Not because she feared him. Because she respected the warning. "My king," she said softly without taking her eyes from the beast. "It's hurt." A strange silence followed. Kael frowned. "Hurt things are often the most dangerous." "I know." "Then why are you walking toward it?" She swallowed. Her heartbeat hammered against her ribs. Every instinct told her to run. Yet something deeper refused. "Because everyone else is looking at its teeth." She took another slow step. "I'm looking at its pain." The words settled over the courtyard like falling snow. Even Kael had no answer. The beast lowered its head slightly. Its growling faded. Lyra stopped only a few feet away. She could feel its warm breath. It smelled of pine forests, cold earth, and winter storms. Its golden eyes studied her with impossible intensity. Not like a predator. Like someone trying to remember a forgotten face. She smiled. Gentle smile. "You're lonely," she whispered. The beast blinked. No one moved. No one even breathed. Very slowly, Lyra lifted one hand. She did not reach for its nose. Or its jaws. She reached toward the side of its neck where the fur looked softest. Her fingers disappeared into thick black fur. Warm. Much warmer than she expected. The beast closed its eyes. A deep rumble echoed through its chest. The guards tensed. "It'll attack. It'll tear her apart." Nothing happened. Does it? The enormous wolf leaned into her touch. Lyra carefully scratched behind one pointed ear. The rumbling changed. Became softer. Content. Then the impossible happened. The shadow beast's tail moved once. Then again. Then began wagging. Not wildly. Slowly. Like an old dog greeting someone it had waited years to see. A collective gasp swept across the courtyard. One noblewoman covered her mouth. Another dropped to her knees. An elderly lord whispered a prayer. King Kael stared as though the world itself had shifted beneath his feet. He had raised the beast. Fought beside it. Bled beside it. Yet never, once, had he seen its tail wag. Not for anyone. Not even him. Lyra laughed quietly. The sound was light. Warm. She gently rubbed beneath the beast's chin. "There you are." The creature rested its enormous head against her shoulder. Its eyes closed completely. It looked peaceful. Like a burden carried for centuries had finally become lighter. The silence broke all at once. "She's a witch." "No. Impossible." "The prophecy." Voices collided from every direction. One elderly court advisor stumbled backward. "It can't be." Another whispered with trembling lips. "The Guardian only bows to." He couldn't finish the sentence. Lord Cassian Duskmere watched from beneath a stone archway. Unlike the others, he did not appear shocked. He appeared frightened. His blue eyes narrowed. His fingers tightened around the silver cane. He carried more for appearance than necessity. His gaze remained fixed on Lyra. Not her face. Her hands. Her movements. Something about her awakened memories he had spent years burying. Impossible memories. His father had ensured there were no survivors. No heirs. No witnesses. The beast had chosen her. Cassian slowly turned away. His expression became perfectly calm once more. No one noticed him leave the courtyard. No one except one old woman standing beside the palace library doors. Elder Mira Solhaven. She watched Cassian disappear into the castle corridors. then looked back toward Lyra. Her wise gray eyes lingered on the young healer's left wrist. As Lyra continued stroking the beast's neck, the sleeve of her cloak slipped back slightly. Just enough. Faded birthmark. Silver. Barely visible. Mira's breath caught. No, it couldn't be. Not after all these years. She forced herself to look away before anyone noticed her reaction. King Kael finally stepped closer. The beast lifted its head. Its ears twitched, but it made no move against him. Kael stopped beside Lyra. For several long moments, he simply looked at her. She lowered her hand immediately and stepped back. I'm sorry. For what? I touched your beast. The answer surprised him. No arrogance, no excitement, only genuine concern that she had overstepped. I wasn't thinking. I noticed. A faint smile almost reached Kael's face before disappearing again. What is your name? Lyra. Lyra what? Ashwyn. Where are you from? A small village beyond the eastern forests. What brought you to my castle? She hesitated. I came for medicine. Kael blinked. Medicine? My adoptive father has been ill for months. The village healer said only herbs from the royal gardens might help him. She looked embarrassed. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Kael studied her carefully. There was no fear hiding behind her words. No ambition. No attempt to impress him. Only simple honesty. It unsettled him more than lies ever could. The beast quietly moved until it stood beside Lyra again. Like a silent guardian. Kael noticed. So did everyone else. He looked toward his captain. Prepare a guest chamber. Several nobles gasped. My king! She cannot stay inside the palace. It isn't safe. Kael's eyes hardened. For whom? No one answered. His gaze returned to Lyra. You will remain here until I understand why the beast refuses to leave your side. She looked confused. If that is your command. It is. Far above the courtyard, hidden behind carved stone windows, whispers spread from servant to servant, noble to noble. By sunset, the entire capital knew. Some claimed the mysterious healer had enchanted the royal guardian. Others insisted the old prophecies had returned. Still others quietly locked their doors before nightfall. Because if the beast had truly recognized someone besides the Alpha King, then the kingdom's future had changed before breakfast. That night, rain drifted gently across Blackthorn Castle. Lyra lay awake in the unfamiliar guest chamber, unable to sleep beneath embroidered blankets that felt softer than anything she had ever touched. Every strange moment from the courtyard replayed through her mind until exhaustion finally claimed her. Outside her window, the shadow beast lay silently beneath the stone balcony. It ignored the royal kennel, ignored every command calling it home. It watched only her window, as though standing guard. Hidden within the castle shadows, Elder Mira quietly approached the chamber. She stopped beneath the moonlight. Her old eyes widened. Silver light slowly spread beneath the skin of Lyra's sleeping wrist. A delicate ancient crest appeared for only a heartbeat. The forgotten emblem of the moon crown. Then it vanished. Elder Mira pressed a trembling hand over her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. After 20 years of silence, after 20 years of believing hope had died, only one thought echoed through her heart. The prophecy has begun. Those words refused to leave Elder Mira's mind. She remained outside the guest chamber long after the silver light disappeared beneath Lyra's skin. Rain whispered across the castle roofs, washing over ancient stone that had witnessed generations of kings rise and fall, yet the old historian barely noticed the cold soaking through her dark cloak. Her trembling fingers tightened around the wooden prayer beads hanging from her wrist. No, she whispered to herself. Yet, it cannot be this soon. But deep inside she knew. The mark she had seen was no illusion. She had seen it once before. 20 years ago. On the tiny wrist of a crying infant wrapped in royal blankets stained with blood. Mira closed her eyes. The memory struck with painful clarity. A burning palace. Screaming servants. The smell of smoke and steel. A queen placing a newborn into her arms with tears running down her face. Save her. The queen's voice had broken beneath the roar of battle. No matter what happens. Let my daughter live. Mira forced the memory away before it consumed her. This was not the night to relive old nightmares. Not when those nightmares had suddenly returned to life. She glanced once more toward Lyra's sleeping window. The gods have finally brought you home, she whispered. Then she disappeared into the shadows before anyone could see her. Elsewhere inside Blackthorn Castle, sleep refused to visit another soul. King Kael stood alone inside the royal strategy chamber. A fire burned quietly inside the great stone hearth, but the warmth never reached him. His leather gloves rested on the large oak table beside dozens of maps. Normally, he would have been studying border reports or winter supply routes. Every report lay unopened. His thoughts refused to leave the courtyard. Beast. Lyra. The impossible moment. Kael poured water into a silver cup but never drank it. Instead, he stared into the flames. I've commanded armies, he muttered. I've fought monsters. I've survived wars. But today... He slowly shook his head. I understood nothing. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Enter. Captain Rowan stepped inside. The scarred commander bowed respectfully. You asked for a report, Your Majesty. Kael nodded. The beast. It refuses every command. Kael's eyes narrowed. It attacked no one. No. It returned to the kennel. Rowan hesitated. No, my king. Where is it? The captain looked almost embarrassed. It is. Outside the guest chambers. Kael looked up sharply. Still. Yes. It has not moved for 3 hours. Kael walked toward the tall window overlooking the castle grounds. Rain blurred the distant courtyard below. Far beyond the torchlight, a massive black silhouette rested beneath the guest wing. Motionless, watching, waiting. Exactly where Rowan had said. Kael's jaw tightened. In 20 years, he spoke almost to himself. It has never guarded anyone. No, Your Majesty. Neither man spoke for several moments. Finally Rowan asked quietly, what should we do about the girl? Kael didn't answer immediately. Is it? He remembered her eyes. There had been no fear inside them, only compassion, as though she had looked beyond the beast's terrifying appearance and seen something wounded. Very few people had ever looked at Kael the same way. Increase the palace guard. Rowan frowned. To protect her. Kael slowly nodded. And to protect everyone else. Across another wing of the castle, Lord Cassian Duskmere dismissed the last servant from his private chambers. The heavy door closed. The polished smile disappeared from his face. His calm mask shattered. His hand slammed against the desk. Books fell onto the floor. Candles shook. It cannot be. His breathing became uneven. No survivors. There were no survivors. He repeated the words like a prayer. Or perhaps a desperate lie. He crossed the room and unlocked a hidden cabinet behind an old tapestry. Inside rested a small iron chest. Its lock opened with an old silver key. Cassian lifted a faded parchment wrapped in dark cloth. The edges had yellowed with age. A royal family record. Most copies had been destroyed years ago. This one remained. Only because his father had kept it. Proof of what had been erased. His eyes scanned the names written in fading ink. King Alaric, Queen Eliana, Princess. His breathing stopped. His fingers slowly curled around the parchment. The final name had been crossed out decades ago. Marked dead. He stared toward the rain-covered window. If she lives. His voice became barely audible. Everything falls. His father's crimes. Their family's power. Their control over the throne. Everything. His expression hardened. Fear slowly transformed into calculation. Well, history would not repeat itself. Before sunrise, the girl would disappear. Lyra awoke long before dawn. For a moment she forgot where she was. The soft mattress, the carved wooden ceiling, silk curtains. Nothing resembled her tiny room back in the eastern village. He sat upright. Rain still tapped gently against the window. Then she heard it. Slow, steady breathing. She walked barefoot across the room. When she pulled the curtain aside, she smiled without realizing it. The shadow beast was still there. Its enormous body rested beneath the balcony. The moment it noticed her, one amber eye opened. Its tail tapped softly against the wet stone. Lyra couldn't help laughing. You stayed. The beast rose to its feet. Not with the frightening grace of a predator, but with quiet patience, like an old friend greeting someone at sunrise. A gentle knock sounded behind her. My lady. Lyra turned. A young servant stood outside carrying a tray. She looked nervous. The king requests that you join him for breakfast. Lyra blinked. Breakfast? Immediately. The servant glanced toward the window, then toward the beast, then quickly looked away. She whispered, It hasn't let anyone come near your room. Lyra looked back outside. The great wolf remained perfectly calm. She quietly reached for the window latch. The servant gasped, My lady. Before she could protest, Lyra pushed the window open. Cold mountain air rushed inside. The beast lifted its head. Good morning, Lyra whispered. She stretched one hand through the opening. The enormous creature stepped closer. Its forehead rested gently beneath her palm. The servant nearly dropped the breakfast tray. Oh! She stared in complete disbelief. It truly likes you. Lyra smiled softly. I think. She gently scratched behind its ear. It just needed someone to be kind. The beast closed its eyes once again. And somewhere deep inside Blackthorn Castle, the whispers grew louder. Because every impossible moment only created one terrifying question. Why had the Alpha King's ancient guardian chosen a simple village healer? King Kael was already waiting when Lyra entered the royal dining hall. Morning light spilled through towering windows, painting long golden lines across polished stone floors. A fire burned inside the massive hearth, taking the edge off the mountain cold, while servants moved silently around the room, careful not to interrupt the heavy silence surrounding their king. Kael remained standing beside the long oak table instead of taking his seat. He had barely slept. The questions circling his mind had only grown louder with the coming of dawn. When the doors opened, every servant instinctively looked toward the entrance. Lyra stepped inside wearing the same simple traveling dress she had arrived in the previous day. Someone had offered her finer clothing, but she had politely declined. The rough brown fabric looked strangely out of place among silver dishes, crystal goblets, and embroidered banners hanging from the vaulted ceiling. Smell. She looked more comfortable than many nobles who had spent their entire lives inside the palace. She stopped several steps away and lowered her head respectfully. You wished to see me, Your Majesty. Kael gestured toward the empty chair across from him. Please. She hesitated. I've never eaten at a king's table. Neither had I once. The unexpected reply caught her off guard. A faint smile touched her lips before she quietly took her seat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the crackling fire filled the silence. Kael studied her without trying to hide it. She noticed. Is something wrong? I'm trying to understand yesterday. So am I. You truly had never seen the shadow beast before? No. You weren't afraid. I was. Kael lifted an eyebrow. You didn't look afraid. Lyra folded her hands together. I've learned something as a healer. He waited. Fear doesn't always help someone who is hurting. Her answer lingered between them. Kael slowly looked toward the window overlooking the courtyard. The beast has killed. I know. It has destroyed armies. I've heard. It could have killed you. Lyra nodded quietly. Yes. So why? She followed his gaze toward the gray sky beyond the glass. Because when I looked at it. He paused. It looked lonelier than dangerous. Kael's expression softened for only an instant. Lonely. No one had ever described the beast that way. Not generals. Not scholars. Not even the trainers who had spent years trying to understand it. Somehow, the word felt painfully accurate. A servant approached with warm bread and herbal tea. Neither touched the food. Kael leaned forward slightly. When you touched it, he searched for the right words. What did you feel? Lyra frowned thoughtfully. It may sound strange. Try me. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, remembering the sensation. Sadness. Kael remained silent. And relief. His brow tightened. As if. She struggled to explain. As if it had been waiting. For what? She looked directly into his eyes. I don't know. The honesty in her answer carried no hesitation. She truly didn't know. That unsettled Kael more than certainty would have. Outside the dining hall, the palace had become a nest of whispers. Servants carried breakfast trays while quietly exchanging rumors. I heard she charmed it. No. I heard she's blessed by the moon goddess. My cousin says the beast refused to leave her window all night. I heard the king himself ordered extra guards. Every hallway carried a different version of yesterday's impossible event. Each story became stranger than the last. By mid-morning, the entire castle had chosen a side. Some believed Lyra was a miracle. Others believed she was a disaster waiting to happen. From the second-floor gallery overlooking the entrance hall, Lord Cassian watched everything. His face wore the same calm smile expected of the kingdom's respected chancellor. No one looking at him would suspect the storm raging beneath that perfect mask. He observed Lyra as she left the dining hall beside a palace servant. She walked slowly, thanking every servant who held open a door. She smiled at frightened maids. She even paused to help an elderly groundskeeper pick up herbs that had spilled from a basket. No performance. No ambition. No attempt to impress anyone. Just simply, help. Cassian hated that. Because kindness made people careless. People protected those they loved. If the castle continued warming to her, removing her would become much harder. His fingers tightened behind his back. So innocent, he murmured. Or so convincing. The way, she could not remain alive. Later that morning, Kael walked through the castle gardens alone. Snow still clung to shaded corners beneath ancient pine trees while small patches of white flowers pushed stubbornly through the frozen earth. He rarely visited the gardens. Kings had little time for peaceful places. His feet had carried him there without thought. Then he saw her. Lyra knelt beside one of the royal gardeners. The old man held out a wilted medicinal plant. She gently examined its roots. No, she said with a warm smile. It isn't dying. The gardener looked surprised. It isn't. It has too much water. She carefully loosened the soil with her fingers. It needs air more than water. The old man chuckled. I've cared for these gardens for 30 years. And today, Lyra replied kindly, they're teaching both of us something. Kael remained hidden beneath the stone archway, watching, listening. She never spoke to people as though she were above them. She never tried to sound wiser than anyone else. She simply shared what she knew. The old gardener laughed. A genuine laugh. Kael realized he had never heard that man laugh before. Something unfamiliar settled quietly inside his chest. Respect. Not because Lyra had calmed the beast. Because she treated everyone exactly the same. Whether king, servant, or gardener. A low rumble interrupted the peaceful morning. The shadow beast emerged from between the pine trees. Its massive body moved silently despite its size. The elderly gardener froze. Lyra simply looked up and smiled. There you are. The beast walked straight past Kael. Past every guard. Past everyone else. Stopped beside Lyra. Then calmly sat beside her. like a loyal companion. The old gardener's jaw dropped. I've never. He couldn't finish. Neither could the nearby guards. The beast ignored them completely. Lyra gently rested one hand against its shoulder. You shouldn't keep following me. Its ears twitched. It probably won't listen, Kael said as he stepped into the garden. Lyra quickly stood. Your Majesty. Kael looked at the beast. Go. The command carried the quiet authority of an alpha king. The beast looked toward him. For one long second. It didn't move. It glanced back at Lyra. Only after she softly patted its shoulder did it finally rise. Without hurry. Without fear. It walked several paces away. Still close enough to watch her. Kael noticed everything. So did every guard. The beast had obeyed. But only after looking at Lyra first. A knot tightened inside his stomach. For the first time in 20 years. He was no longer certain he fully understood the creature bound to his own blood. And somewhere high above the gardens, hidden behind the windows of the western tower, Elder Mira watched the scene unfold with quiet tears in her eyes. Every passing hour erased another impossible doubt. The Guardian was not choosing a stranger. It was remembering someone it had never truly forgotten. And that truth, if spoken aloud before its time, could plunge the entire kingdom into chaos. The afternoon sun slipped behind thick gray clouds, covering Blackthorn Castle in a cold silver light. The cheerful sounds from the gardens faded as servants hurried back inside, carrying baskets of herbs and fresh bread before another mountain storm reached the capital. But inside the palace, the storm had already begun. Rumors moved faster than the wind. Every corridor carried another whispered version of the impossible story. The beast followed her. It obeyed only after she touched it. The king spoke to her for nearly an hour. No ordinary healer receives that kind of attention. Some whispers carried hope. Others carried fear. By midday, even the palace guards had stopped discussing border patrols. There was only one subject left. The mysterious young woman from the eastern forests. Lord Cassian walked through the council wing with his usual graceful confidence. Every noble bowed respectfully as he passed. He greeted each one with the same practiced smile. Warm, patient, trustworthy. No one could see the calculations behind his calm eyes. He entered the royal council chamber without announcing himself. 6 senior nobles were already waiting around the circular stone table. They immediately rose. My Lord Chancellor. Cassian motioned for them to sit. I trust all of you have heard yesterday's unusual events. The oldest noble cleared his throat. The entire kingdom has heard. Another leaned forward. The people are already calling the girl the Beast Whisperer. A third noble looked uneasy. If the stories continue spreading, the old prophecies will return. Silence settled over the chamber. No one liked speaking about the prophecies. Even mentioning them felt dangerous. Cassian folded his hands neatly behind his back. Prophecies survive because frightened people prefer legends over reason. But the beast accepted her. It accepted a healer. Cassian interrupted smoothly. Animals are unpredictable. One noble slowly shook his head. Not that one. Silence. Cassian allowed it to linger. Then he spoke carefully. The kingdom cannot afford panic. Several heads nodded. If the people begin believing forgotten bloodlines have returned, every ambitious lord across the north will use those rumors to challenge the crown. The youngest council member frowned. What do you suggest? Cassian looked toward the tall windows overlooking the city below. We discover exactly who she is. And if the rumors prove true. Cassian's expression never changed. They won't. His certainty had already begun to crack. At the same time, Lyra wandered through another part of the castle with a young palace servant leading the way. I've never seen so many rooms, Lyra admitted quietly. The servant laughed. I've worked here 5 years. I still get lost. They turned another corner. Massive stained glass windows filled the hallway with soft blue and crimson light. Ancient kings looked down from colorful glass panels. Each carried wolves upon their banners. Lyra slowed. "They're beautiful." The servant smiled proudly. "The royal family has ruled from this castle for centuries." Lyra studied one of the oldest windows. The painted queen held out her hand toward an enormous black wolf standing beside her throne. Something stirred inside Lyra. Not a memory. Not exactly. More like feeling. Warm. Familiar. She frowned slightly. "Are you all right?" The servant's voice pulled her back. "Yes." She forced a small smile. "I just felt like..." She stopped herself. "Like what?" "I've seen this before." The servant looked confused. "But you've never been here." "I know." Lyra looked once more at the stained glass before quietly walking on. She couldn't explain it. But something inside the castle kept pulling at her heart, as though distant echoes were trying to reach her through time. Far below the western tower, the shadow beast suddenly stopped walking. Its ears lifted. Its nose turned toward the ancient halls beneath the castle. A deep rumble vibrated inside its chest. Not anger. Recognition. The nearby guards exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "What's wrong with it now?" No one had an answer. The beast stared toward the oldest part of Blackthorn Castle for several long moments, then slowly relaxed again. But it never completely lowered its guard. King Kael stood inside the royal training yard, practicing alone. Steel rang against steel as his sword struck the wooden practice post again and again. Each swing was precise, controlled, disciplined. Normally, training cleared his mind. Today, nothing helped. Every strike brought the same questions back. Why had the beast ignored him? Why had it trusted Lyra? What had truly happened yesterday? He stopped swinging. His breathing remained steady, but frustration flickered across his face. "Your Majesty." Captain Rowan approached from the gate. "The patrol reports are ready." Kael accepted the scroll but never opened it. Instead he asked, "What do the soldiers think?" Rowan understood immediately. "They're divided." "Explain." "Some believe she's blessed. And the others? They believe she's dangerous." Kael looked toward the castle towers. "And you?" The captain hesitated. Finally he answered honestly. "I've served beside the beast for 15 years. Kael waited. "I've never seen it look at anyone the way it looks at her." The king lowered his eyes. Neither had he. As evening settled over the capital, torches flickered to life along every castle wall. Rain clouds gathered once more over the northern mountains. Inside her guest chamber, Lyra sat beside the window reading one of the simple herbal books the palace healer had lent her. She wasn't thinking about prophecies, or kings, or politics. She was thinking about home. She wondered whether her adoptive father had eaten today, whether his fever had become worse, whether she should ask permission to leave tomorrow. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door. A servant bowed respectfully. "The king wishes you to remain in the palace a little longer." Lyra blinked. "For how long?" "We were not told." The servant offered an apologetic smile before leaving. Lyra quietly closed the door. She rested her forehead against the cool wood. "I only came here for medicine," she whispered. Outside the balcony, the shadow beast slowly lifted its head, as if it had heard every word. Its glowing amber eyes never left the room. Far across the castle, Lord Cassian watched that same balcony from his private tower. His face disappeared into the darkness as the first drops of rain began falling again. His decision had finally been made. The girl could no longer be allowed to remain under the king's protection. Before the truth had a chance to reveal itself, she would have to disappear forever. The rain grew heavier as darkness settled over Blackthorn Castle. Thunder rolled across the northern mountains, shaking the ancient walls that had stood against wars, winters, and countless generations of kings. Torches flickered along the battlements, their flames bending beneath the icy wind, while the castle gates closed with a deep groan that echoed across the sleeping capital. Inside the palace, however, very few people were asleep. The impossible events of the day had stolen peace from every corner of the royal household. King Kael stood alone on the highest balcony overlooking the kingdom. Below him, thousands of tiny lights glowed through the rain as families gathered inside warm homes, completely unaware that the balance of the kingdom might already be changing. His cloak snapped behind him in the wind. The cold never bothered him. His thoughts did. He rested both hands on the wet stone railing. For years, his life had followed the same path. Protect the kingdom. Lead the wolves. Trust the beast. Question no further. Everything had been simple. Until yesterday. His eyes drifted toward the guest wing. Even from this distance, he could make out the enormous black figure lying beneath Lyra's balcony. The shadow beast had not moved. It had ignored its own resting grounds. Ignored every familiar place inside the castle. Its entire attention remained fixed on one quiet room. Kael exhaled slowly. I don't understand you anymore. The words disappeared into the rain. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. Captain Rowan stopped several feet away. You asked to be informed if the beast changed position. Kael didn't turn. It has. No, Your Majesty. A brief silence followed. Then why are you here? Rowan hesitated. Because something else has changed. Kael finally looked back. The palace guards. What about them? They've stopped fearing the girl. Kael frowned. Explain. The men assigned outside her chamber say she thanked every guard by name. Kael remained silent. She asked whether they had eaten. Another pause. When one young guard admitted he hadn't, Rowan almost smiled. She gave him half of her own supper. Kael looked away again. He wasn't surprised. Some people commanded loyalty through fear. Others earned it without trying. Lyra belonged to the second kind. That realization unsettled him far more than he wished to admit. Across the castle, Lyra sat beside the small fireplace inside her chamber. The flames danced gently across the room, filling it with soft orange light. She held a small cloth pouch in her hands. Inside were the few dried herbs she had carried from home. They were almost gone. She sighed quietly. I hope Father is resting. She could picture him clearly. The old wooden cottage. The herb garden behind it. The smell of fresh bread drifting through the tiny kitchen. He would be worried by now. She had promised to return before sunset. She had somehow ended up sleeping inside a royal castle under the protection of an alpha king. It still didn't feel real. A faint scratching sound came from the balcony doors. She looked up. The shadow beast sat outside. Rain soaked its thick black fur, yet it made no effort to seek shelter. Lyra frowned. You'll freeze. The beast simply watched her. She stood and walked toward the glass. The moment she approached, its tail moved once. She laughed softly. You really are stubborn. Carefully, she opened the balcony door just enough to step outside beneath the stone overhang. Cold wind wrapped around her instantly. The beast remained perfectly still. She reached out and gently brushed rainwater from the thick fur around its neck. You should be somewhere warm. The creature leaned slightly into her hand. Its eyes closed. A low rumble vibrated through its chest. Not a warning. Contentment. Lyra smiled. I wish people understood you. The beast slowly opened one eye. For a strange moment, she had the odd feeling it understood every word. Hidden several rooftops away, another pair of eyes watched the quiet scene. Lord Cassian stood beneath the shadow of the western tower. Rain dripped from the edge of his hood. His expression remained unreadable. The girl had done it again. Without fear. Without effort. The beast behaved like an old companion instead of the kingdom's greatest weapon. His stomach tightened. The old stories. The old blood. The old symbols. Too many impossible pieces were beginning to fit together. He could not allow that. Not again. He quietly turned away from the balcony. A palace servant approached, bowing respectfully. "My Lord Chancellor." Cassian's voice remained calm. "I require a list." "Of what, my lord?" "Everything we know about the girl." The servant nodded immediately. "Her village. The family who raised her. Everyone she has ever lived beside." The servant hurried away. Cassian watched him disappear into the corridor. "Somewhere," he whispered to himself, "someone made a mistake 20 years ago." His eyes darkened. "And I intend to find it." Elsewhere inside the palace, Elder Mira slowly climbed the narrow spiral staircase leading toward the abandoned archive tower. Few people entered this place anymore. Dust-covered forgotten shelves. Ancient scrolls rested beneath faded cloth. Most believed these records held little value. Mira knew better. She lit a single oil lamp. Its golden light revealed row after row of weathered books. She walked with practiced certainty until she reached the oldest cabinet. Her hand hovered over the wooden door. For several long seconds, she didn't open it. Instead, she whispered a quiet prayer. "Forgive me." Then she pulled the cabinet open. Inside rested several sealed bundles wrapped in dark blue cloth. Each carried the faded silver emblem of the moon crown. Mira stared at them with tear-filled eyes. "I promised I would never reveal you." Her voice trembled. "Unless hope returned." Lightning flashed across the sky. The old historian slowly reached toward the forgotten records. She stopped. Not yet. Time had not come. She carefully closed the cabinet once again. "If the child truly is who I believe." She looked toward the rain-covered window. "The truth must reveal itself naturally." She extinguished the lamp. Darkness swallowed the archive once more. Near midnight, the storm finally began to weaken. The castle settled into uneasy silence. Lyra had fallen asleep beside the dying fire instead of climbing into bed. An open herbal book rested across her lap. The balcony door remained slightly open. Cold mountain air drifted softly through the room. The shadow beast remained awake. Its ears suddenly lifted. Its entire body became still. Something had changed. Far below, hidden among the castle gardens, a faint movement disturbed the wet bushes. The beast's glowing amber eyes narrowed. A low growl rolled quietly through the darkness. Not loud enough to wake the castle, but enough to warn whatever lurked below. The unseen figure immediately froze, then slipped back into the shadows before disappearing into the rain. The beast continued staring into the darkness for several long moments. Only after the danger vanished did the growling stop. Inside the chamber, Lyra slept peacefully, completely unaware that something or someone had been watching her room from the gardens. High above the courtyard, King Kael opened his eyes. He had heard the beast's warning growl. It was different from the others. Controlled. Deliberate. The sound of a guardian sensing danger. Kael's instincts sharpened instantly. He stepped toward the window overlooking the castle grounds. The rain hid everything. But deep in his heart, one certainty settled like stone. Someone had already begun moving against the mysterious young healer. And before another sunrise arrived, the quiet miracle that had stunned the kingdom would become the center of a far more dangerous game. A pale gray dawn slowly climbed over the jagged peaks surrounding Blackthorn Castle. The storm had passed. Thin ribbons of mist drifted across the valley below, wrapping the kingdom in an eerie silence that felt almost unnatural after the night's heavy rain. Normally, sunrise brought movement. Stable hands prepared horses. Kitchen fires filled the air with the smell of fresh bread. Guards changed shifts with cheerful greetings. This morning, the castle woke cautiously, as if everyone sensed something invisible had changed. King Kael had not returned to bed. He stood inside the royal war room, studying nothing. Maps covered the great oak table. Pins marked villages. Trade routes crossed the mountains. Border reports waited unopened beside a silver candle holder whose flame had nearly burned away. His thoughts remained fixed on the warning growl he had heard during the night. The shadow beast never wasted its voice. Every growl meant something. Every movement had purpose. Captain Rowan entered quietly. "My king." Kael turned immediately. "The patrol. We searched the western gardens before dawn. And we found footprints." Kael's eyes narrowed. "Whose?" "Unknown. Wolf." "No. Palace guard." Rowan slowly shook his head. The boots were unlike any issued to our soldiers. A heavy silence settled between them. "Did anyone enter the guest wing?" "No." "Anyone leave?" "No." Kael looked toward the narrow window overlooking the castle grounds. "So someone came. And someone escaped." Rowan nodded. "It would appear so." Kael's jaw tightened. "Double the guards around Lady Lyra." Rowan hesitated. "My king." Kael noticed immediately. "What is it?" "The beast." "What about it?" "It refuses to let anyone stand too close to her door." Kael almost smiled despite himself. "Then post the guards farther back." Lyra awoke as sunlight filtered gently through the curtains. For the first time in days, she felt rested. The warmth of the fireplace had long faded, leaving only glowing embers inside the stone hearth. She stretched slowly before remembering where she was. The castle. The king. The beast. Yesterday returned all at once. A quiet knock came at the door. "Come in." The same young servant entered carrying fresh bread, warm tea, and a basket filled with herbs. She smiled nervously. "Good morning." Lyra smiled back. "Good morning." The servant carefully placed the basket on the table. "The royal healer thought these might interest you." Lyra's eyes brightened. She immediately recognized several rare healing plants. "Oh!" She gently lifted one between her fingers. "I've only seen these in books." The servant looked relieved to see her happy. "The king ordered that anything you need should be provided." Lyra blinked. "He did." "Yes." She lowered her eyes. "He also asked whether your father's medicine can be prepared here." For a long moment, Lyra simply stared at the herbs. No king had ever owed her kindness. Yet Kael continued offering it without asking for anything in return. A quiet warmth settled inside her chest. Not affection. Not yet. Just gratitude. "I would like that very much," she whispered. Outside the chamber, the shadow beast remained exactly where it had spent the night. Several palace guards now stood farther down the corridor, giving the creature respectful distance. One young guard cautiously whispered to another, "Do you think it understands us?" His older companion glanced toward the giant wolf. "I think." He swallowed. "It's listening right now." The beast slowly opened one glowing amber eye. Both guards immediately looked straight ahead. Neither spoke again. Far below the guest wing, Lord Cassian walked through the eastern gardens with measured steps. Morning dew clung to every flower. Birdsong filled the trees. To anyone watching, it appeared to be a peaceful morning stroll. His thoughts, however, were anything but peaceful. A palace servant hurried toward him carrying several rolled parchments. "My Lord Chancellor." Cassian accepted them. "The reports. Everything we could discover." Cassian began reading as he walked. Name. He already knew that. Lyra Ashwyn. Raised by farmers beyond the eastern forest. No surviving birth records. His pace slowed. "No birth records." The servant nodded. "The village priest says she arrived as an infant." "With whom?" "A traveling woman." Cassian stopped walking. "What woman?" "No one knows." "Name." "Unknown." "Where did she come from?" "No one remembers." The servant looked uncomfortable. "It was 20 years ago." Cassian stared silently at the parchment. Exactly 20 years. His heartbeat slowed. Not from relief. From certainty. His father's greatest secret was beginning to breathe again. He folded the report carefully. "Continue investigating." "Yes, my lord." I want every name, every witness, every surviving record. The servant hurried away. Cassian remained standing among the flowers. For the first time, the fear inside him outweighed his confidence. Elder Mira crossed paths with Lyra in one of the castle's quiet inner courtyards. The old historian carried a small basket of dried flowers gathered from the monastery gardens. She smiled gently. You slept well. Lyra returned the smile. Better than I expected. I'm glad. For a moment, neither woman spoke. A fountain trickled softly between them. Mira's eyes rested briefly on Lyra's face. The same eyes, the same quiet kindness. So much of her mother still lived within her. You seem troubled, Lyra said softly. Mira blinked. Do I? You look like someone carrying a very heavy memory. The old woman smiled sadly. Perhaps I am. Lyra stepped closer. My father always says memories become lighter when shared. Mira looked into her eyes. For one dangerous heartbeat. She almost told her everything. Who she was, what had happened, why the beast had chosen her. But the moment passed. Not yet. The truth needed the right time. Instead, Mira gently reached into her basket and removed a small sprig of dried moonflower. It helps people sleep peacefully. Lyra accepted it with both hands. Thank you. As their fingers briefly touched, Mira noticed the sleeve of Lyra's dress shift slightly. The faded silver birthmark remained hidden beneath ordinary skin. Invisible again. But Mira no longer needed to see it. She knew. And that knowledge filled her with equal parts hope and fear. Near midday, King Kael crossed the same courtyard. His eyes met Lyra's almost immediately. She bowed politely. Your Majesty. You've settled in. I'm trying. He noticed the herbs in her basket. The healer found what you needed. Yes. Her smile was genuine. My father will have a chance now. Kael nodded once. I'm pleased. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Simply quiet. The fountain continued singing beside them. Finally Lyra spoke. I hope I haven't caused trouble. Kael looked at her steadily. The trouble isn't yours. She frowned. I don't understand. You don't need to. His voice remained calm. For now. He glanced toward the shadow beast resting beneath a nearby oak tree. Your only task is to remain safe. Lyra followed his gaze. The beast had been watching them the entire time. Its ears lifted slightly the moment she looked its way. A small smile touched her lips. It worries too much. Kael looked at the enormous guardian. So do I. The words escaped before he could stop them. Both of them fell silent. Neither seemed prepared for what had just been said. Kael cleared his throat first. I have council duties. Lyra nodded. And I have herbs to sort. He inclined his head respectfully. She returned the gesture. Then they walked in opposite directions. Neither noticed they both glanced back at exactly the same moment. Their eyes met across the courtyard. Only for a heartbeat. Then they continued walking. High above them, hidden behind the carved stone balcony of the council wing, Lord Cassian watched the silent exchange. His face darkened. The beast's loyalty had already become dangerous. If the king's trust followed, the kingdom would soon stand beyond his control. He slowly turned away from the balcony. His decision was complete. The girl would not be allowed another peaceful night inside Blackthorn Castle.